Welcome to the Selling in the Motor Trade podcast, in association with Simco Training. This is the weekly podcast where we share best practice, tips and ideas on how to sell more cars, improve your service department, and generally put more profit into your dealership or dealer group. I'm your host, Simon Bowkett. Now, some of you probably already know me as Skippy. I would start by saying thank you for taking the time to listen to this podcast. Hi, and welcome to another episode of Selling in the Motor Trade. It's my pleasure today, and actually, I've been really looking forward to this interview for a long time. It's a lady called Elise Kephart. When I first come across her, she was known as the YouTube Diva. I was at the National Automotive Dealers Association, and there was a guy called Jim Ziegler, and I thought Sean's mentioned her as well. Sean Bradley was talking about this lady called the YouTube Diva, and she was working at the time, I believe, in a Honda dealership in California. And they were talking about what she's doing, how she was personally branding herself. And I thought, wow, I love the idea of what she's doing with video. And let me tell you, Elise Kephart now runs her own sales training organization in the United States. And I got to tell you, she knows her stuff. There's the old cliche, those who can do, those who can't train. But let me tell you, following Elise on social media, I know she is someone that will take the call in the sales department. She'll go out in second face, and she actually knows what she's talking about. So listen, Elise, I just want to say thank you so much for taking the time to come on the podcast.
Thank you for having me. This is really exciting.
Starbucks. Yeah. Starbucks, was that a good grounding for you? Because again, you're not direct sales, but you're speaking to lots of customers, angry customers. You got to calm down. And anything really, was it a great grounding for you?
Well, you're also dealing with customers. Like I always had the opening shift, so you're dealing with people that have not had their caffeine intake at but yet they're up at 4:30 in the morning, with like at 5 in the morning, right when you open to like on routine. And I remember at that age, I was wondering, like, gosh, like what like these people are always like, here every morning, and they have things very specific their way, like their drink, right? Now at like a place where I'm at in my life, it's like it's almost like I'm on the other side of that, where like I need to, like I'm there at routine. But I take it in perspective of like, it's a great company where it teaches you hard work, and a lot about just, I mean, one of the reasons I think Starbucks is so successful is because they have a recipe, whether it's their culture, their employee culture, right, or their drinks, whatever they put in their drinks, right, to get people to coming back. But one of the things that you learn is, like, obviously, and depending on where you live, there could be a Starbucks within a mile of each other, right?
Yep.
So to a person that's like waking up at the crack of dawn to do whatever they're going to do for their day, and they've got to have their coffee, like they have two or three choices sometimes, like on what Starbucks they're going to go to. And it's all within the same driving distance, and the prices are the same, right? And the drink recipe is the same. But like, what is going to trigger that person to go to one of three Starbucks choices within the same driving distance?
Yeah.
Right. And it's the experience. It's the people. It's like, that's the core part of it.
Yeah.
When everything else is similar. Right. And so I've kind of always taken that with selling cars, or what I do now is I want to be the company, or the one that people choose to go to. Yeah, I mean, I have it down in my head, and I broke it down before the phone call. I have 12 scenarios. I broke it down before I did this. Like, I said there's 12 reasons that I'm crossing my fingers on that don't happen when a customer picks up their phone. And I kind of went through just a quick summary of them. And sure enough, the first cut, the one chance, it's like Eminem, like live, right? The one lady that picked up was one of those 12 scenarios, but it's kind of like an asterisk to it, because it's the objection of, I'm at work right now. Can you call me back? Right.
Yep.
And it doesn't mean that it doesn't mean that I'm, oh crap, they said that I'm done on this phone call. It means that I have one chance to move past this objection properly. I can't like, dance with the same objection, meaning I can't, if a customer says no, if I move past it and they still object to it in the same way, like I'm at work, then it's better for me at that point to hang up. So for sure enough, she said, "Oh yeah, that's right, but I'm at work right now. Can you call me back?" And it was like, oh my gosh, it was crazy because at the end of the call, I still got the appointment, but it was all down to like literally that much of just a math game almost for me, the way I break it down.
I love that, but if you make enough calls, I know that if you make enough calls, you know what the maths are, what the numbers are. You know you're going to get people who was going to say one of those 12 things. You know the objection, and if you know the objection that's going to come up, you know how to deal with it before it comes up. You got that game plan, right?
And I almost, one of the things that I've really dove into over the last probably since the year 2020 up is the psychology of a text message, to the point where in the same way that we have reasons for what we do what we say, or the psychology of what we do face-to-face selling or phone selling, breaking down the psychology of a text message to where if you can get a text message to where at the end of the text message the customer is saying, hey, it's cool to call me, then those 12 scenarios pretty much like all out the window. Right? Because they're not going to tell you, take me off your list. If a text message, they just said like, hey, yeah, cool. It's cool, Simon, to call me. Right. So it's almost like it's almost like this extra little category of when you get engagement over text or email. Are you training on the right process? Do you know how to
can I just I just want to get your views here. For me, text is better than email now. Emails are ignorable. Emails go into spam and junk, and a text, it's just there. I mean, you and I, before this, we text one another a few times. Done, because you read it straight away. Done. Give me 4 minutes. Not a problem. I'm here. Get on when you can. Hi, and welcome to another episode of Selling in the Motor Trade. Today, I'm joined by John O'Hanlon, and I'm really excited to see John here today because I've followed him on social media for many years. I know a little bit about what John has done from the outside. I bumped into him at the National Automotive Dealers Association. He made my day by walking past me and said, the podcast man. And John Smythe was with you from memory.
That's right.
And I had to say, John, you're coming on the podcast. He said, of course I would. I'd love to. So, John, welcome aboard. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Simon. The only thing you missed out there was we were both in Dallas.
We were in Dallas.
It's not a bad place to meet someone for the first time, is it?
That is true. Although I love the NATA conference. I'm a sucker. 22 of them I think I've been to now, 23, something like that. And I just always amaze me that so many times the American market seems so far ahead of what we're doing, but sometimes so far behind.
Behind us, yeah. And I think you're right. But when you look at what you've got on the East and the West, some really, really advanced thinking that does lead our thinking over here. But then there's so much in terms of the rest of the country that you do actually think, really, are we still talking about this? Yes. In 2023?
So true. And I always love to go to real dealership visits whenever I'm out there. And what they talk about in the shows and what happens is often two different things.
But they're huge scale businesses, aren't they? Huge businesses.
This is a shameless plug for our first 90-day sales training program. We often say that the skills we learn in the first 3 months, good and bad, last us for the rest of our career. Can I ask you to think back when you were still as an accountant now, before you went into Ridgeway, is there anything that's important now that you learned in your first 90 days that's important for someone starting now in the business?
Yeah, and I unashamedly, I still talk about the numbers and actually knowing your business. You've got to know your numbers, and whether that's for a sales exec, knowing how to stack his deal. Because if you don't know how much money you're making in a car, how do you know how much commission you earn? And it's the same in terms of the workshop or parts. We don't control the margins, then we become busy fools. And then it's having that capabilities of actually not only knowing where you are, but then beginning to learn to do the forecasting, because that's when it gets much more exciting as a manager in the business. And that was some of the disciplines that, you know, I was able to bring and enhance, because, you know, we did have some good tools originally. You know, a lot of the guys were ex-Hartwell, which had some really good PLC disciplines. Now, if we can take some of those PLC disciplines and then enhance it with a culture that's just a little bit softer, with much quicker decision making, then you begin to get to a winning place. So, yeah, absolutely. Know your numbers, know what you've got to do. Because if you know your numbers, know what you've got to do, it allows you to see where your efforts, where your focus, where your priorities have got to be. And that will make every part of what you do every day a little bit easier.
Yeah, can I ask you as well, with your time for Grant Thornton, does anyone stand out as a mentor? And the reason why I say that, when I started when I was 17 years old in the motor trade, I was one of these cadet salespeople, which of course is 12 months of washing cars, making the teas and coffees. But I had two mentors that really stood out, and it's Tony Ireland, and lastly it was Mike Carney. And I always think, what would Tony do in this situation? How would he deal with that? And I always, even now, I'm going to be 50 this year, I sit back and think, hold on, how would Tony Ireland have dealt with that? It dealing with a staff member, the car park walk, dare I say it, so many different things. Is there anyone that really stood out for you as a mentor early on?
I think, you know, I've mentioned Mark Cummings, who was the lead partner in the Australian Grant Thornton Motor Dealer Services, who actually just took me aside and says, John, I think you've got a bit more about you. What are you doing? Why are you just sort of gently plodding? I said, well, I've got to Australia. What more does I was actually, we're going to sit down, we're going to write your business plan, and you're going to go back and present it. And actually, what reinforced to me at that point was actually, you control what happens in your world. If you allow things to happen round about you, things will happen, but it might not be for your benefit. And actually, you've got to go and grab it. You know, the oil goes to the noisy wheel, and it's actually, but he also showed me how I had to, you know, how I could actually make the argument, do the presentation in a way that would allow me to do that. And that was the first time almost scales falls from your eyes. And that's when you realize that you can make things happen.
Hi, and welcome to another episode of Selling in the Motor Trade. Today, I'm joined by a man called Colin McAllister. He's the Training and Development Manager for the John Clark Motor Group. I can only say this because I'm married to a Scottish person. But one thing you might need for this podcast is subtitles, because he's got the most Scottish accent I've ever heard. I've got no idea how subtitles are going to work on a podcast, but if you're listening to this on YouTube, maybe you'll be right. Colin, welcome along.
Thanks, Simon. I always introduce myself when I work down south and say, like, I'm from Glasgow, so you all have funny accents. And I had a cracking time. I was at Mazda one time at Riverbridge House doing a presentation. It was actually the most money I've ever earned in a single day. And I had 38 of these regional managers for Mazda in the room. And I said, you know, so if at some time I use a Glaswegianism and you don't understand, feel free to ask me to translate. I'll be fine. So this girl sticks her hand up. And I said, yes. And she said, excuse me, can you translate into the Greek? I said, in Milo Elenika Polikala, which is perfect Greek. No, unfortunately, I don't speak Greek. And after that, nobody said a single thing all day. They were like...
Is there a future for car salespeople in the motor trade?
Absolutely. I think 100% there's a future for car salespeople. You need to embrace the technology. That's what's going to make you add value. As the marketplace becomes more and more transparent, you know, so you're on the web and there's this golf and there's that golf and there's that golf. What's going to make it stand out is you, the dealer you're from, and I call it provenance. So for me, you know, it's when you're looking at whiskey, you're always looking for the whiskey's provenance. So when you're looking at a car, then I always train people when, you know, whatever they're doing, whether they're responding by email, whether they're responding by phone, whether they're responding by video, it's the first thing you need to do is set provenance. So it's the provenance of the dealership itself. You know, so, you know, we're John Clark, BMW, been here in Aberdeen for 40 years as BMW's sole representative. And so you're adding the value to John Clark. And I'm Colin McAllister, and I've been with the group for 9 years. And this is what we're doing. It's a family business, so I'm adding value to me. And then the final thing is, in this car, what an absolute cracker you have picked. This is a locally source car. We sold it, we've serviced it, we've fitted every single part to this vehicle. It's 100% BMW. What you probably don't know about Aberdeen is that we are 89 miles away from the nearest motorway. Don't tell the car, because it doesn't know you can do 70 miles an hour. So it's been driven all around Bankery and D-side, but it's never seen a motorway.
Yeah.
Now, all of a sudden, I've just put value on that SV plate that's on the car, you know. And just simple thing that will start to make mine stand out from the one that's in Derby or Newcastle or, you know, wherever it is for that national buyer.
I love you say that. We always say there's 3 sales in any sale. You go sell yourself first, the product second, and then the deal. And that's exactly what you're doing. That just leaves me to say that all details of this episode and other episodes on the selling in the motor trade can be found on our website, simcotraining.co.uk. Go there to get a copy of our book, Words That Sell Cars. Go there to sign up to a free trial of our Sales Fitness online sales training program. Easiest way to get hold of me is Simon Bowkett through LinkedIn. Thank you.